My greatest influence was my first teacher, Grandmaster Jim Maloney, his 10th Dan now in Wei Chi Ru.
Martial arts has given me the ability to be able to not be afraid, to take control of the situation.
I started combat Hapkido at the age of, I would say, 59.
Thank you everyone for joining us for our premiere episode of Evolution, as we take a behind-the-scenes look at the martial arts here in Nova Scotia. The martial arts has been around for centuries, and as the title suggests, they have evolved. Tonight's episode will be focused on combat Hapkido. With its roots in Korea, combat Hapkido is a modern Hapkido system founded by Grandmaster John Pellegrini in 1990. Combat Hapkido is a new interpretation and application of selected body of Hapkido techniques. The word combat was added to distinguish this system from traditional Hapkido styles and is also referred to as the science of self-defense. We spoke with Grandmaster John Pellegrini and his wife, Master Trina Pellegrini, via telephone from their home in Tennessee about his tenacity to gain the recognition for combat Hapkido.
When I started studying Hapkido in the mid-1980s, I was studying obviously traditional Hapkido, and I had several Korean grandmasters that I trained under, including Grandmaster Kwon Sik Myung and Grandmaster John Won Park, and of course my first Hapkido instructor was an American, Grandmaster Michael Fournier. I studied their system, and while I was also training and teaching Taekwondo at that time, and I was already a 5th Dan in Taekwondo when my passion truly developed for Hapkido. And I set out to restructure the system a little bit. I did not invent a new martial art. I just created a style of an existing martial art, like many other people have done with all the martial arts. There are many styles of Kempo, many styles of Jiu-Jitsu, many styles of Karate, and this is just another style of Hapkido, a little more modern, a little more geared to reality-based modern self-defense. The system I had presented to Grandmaster In Senseo in Korea, the head of the World Kido Federation, which supervises something like over 35 Korean martial arts. Grandmaster In Senseo was maybe a little bit skeptical in the beginning because he is very traditional, obviously. So he decided, when I went to Korea in '93, I spent a week with him training, showing him what I had done with the system, and he gave me like a conditional approval, and he said, oh, yes, your self-defense is very good. I like what you're doing, but I want to see you evolve some more, and we'll see, what happens. So it took 6 years. I had several trips to Korea, and I brought also Grandmaster In Senseo into the United States for seminars 3 times. And it took all that time for him to convince himself that I was not a flight by night, that I was not someone who was going to disrespect the original art, that I was true to the roots, I was true to the principles and concepts of the system. I had just made some modifications to make it more appealing to an American audience, and later obviously to an international audience, and make it more appealing also to mature people who were looking not for sport and not so much for rituals in the martial arts, but a very practical and effective system of self-defense. So in 1999, he gave me his official approval, and we became what is called the Kwon, The Japanese call it a ru. And we became Chantukwan Hapkido, which means combat Hapkido in Korean. And this was the first time in the history of the art that an American master, at that time I was master, an American master had created a system that had been recognized by the Korean government. It was unprecedented. It never happened before. And it was quite an honor, as you can imagine. And then, obviously, 5 years later, I was promoted to the highest rank, 9th dan. Again, I was the first American ever to be promoted to 9th dan by the Kido. There has been others since, but I was the first one. And then again, that was also quite an honor. So, in a sense, although we started as a little more of an eclectic, modernized style, in a sense, we have become a mainstream martial art. And now we are in about 15 countries around the world.
Joining me is Master Mike Fournier, the senior ranking Chantukwan Hapkido Master in Canada and the National Director for the International Combat Hapkido Federation. He is also a 3-time Martial Arts Hall of Fame inductee, and we're very happy to have you here on our show, and we're very happy to be here in your studio.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy that you were able to come in today and kick around a little bit.
Absolutely. Let's start off by speaking to your native roots. You were born in Ottawa. You're a Métis Algonquin.
Yep.
Let's talk about your heritage.
Yep. Yeah, Métis Algonquin status. My roots go back to Grand Lac, Victoria. It used to be an HBC post, no longer is. But yeah, that's where the roots go to. And that group moved down, when they moved down to Lac Sainte-Marie, and that's where my great-grandfather, my grandfather was born. And that was something that they established. They founded. They were squatters, more or less, according to a lot of folks. But well, that's where it goes. And the other side of it is my Scottish heritage. Although I have Fournier as my last name, very French, it's mostly all Scottish and Algonquin in the background, in the lineage. And we trace back to beyond the rising of 45 in Scotland, and it's quite an interesting thing. In doing what I do now, my greatest influence was my first teacher, Grandmaster Jim Maloney, who's 10th Dan now in Wei-Chi-Ru. At the time, it was a 2nd Dan. And we started training, I started training with him, and I learned a lot of things from him. And it was always fun to go to his dojo, learn new things, be challenged and pushed, and to really learn the essence. This is really where my first understanding of the essence of martial arts started. He really taught it through his example and all. So at some point, I don't remember when, but there was some point I said, I'd like to have my own school one day, and teach. That'd be so cool, But I never dreamed for 1 second that I would move away with the Army and that I would not practice Wei-Chi-Ru anymore. And when I came back to the area with the military, I took up Hapkido and never looked back. But there's always a little bit of pepper, a little bit of influence of Wei-Chi-Ru in what I do, because you can't erase that. So hence, when we do certain things, it's a certain degree of power in it, because it comes from Wei-Chi. It comes from Master Maloney, who taught how to be powerful. So this is what they're learning as well. So it influences it. So again, an indigenous man, a Mi'kmaq chief, who back in those days was just an instructor, and that's what he did. And he continues to practice now. Even he still trains and he still practices. I watched him do kata for his 10th dan, at 70, and I thought, you wouldn't want to mess with that guy. No, he's very powerful, very powerful. So I keep being influenced by him. We still meet. We still have the odd lunch together, and we talk about martial arts, and Aboriginal things and that and subjects, and always very good conversations. So I enjoy the time I do spend with him, because it's important to have that attachment to the Indigenous roots.
When did you first start training in Hapkido directly after all your previous experience? Where did it begin for you?
When I was first retired, I retired in 1997. Just before that, I was teaching workshops in self-defense and protection. And it wasn't a big deal in those days, it wasn't a big thing. And then I met who was to become my dear friend, Eric Rushton, who had just started a Hapkido school. And we met, and he had just bought the first charter, the ICHF charter. So we were introduced, and we got to talking, and he invited me to come in and teach a workshop on a Saturday morning, 2-hour workshop on the nervous system, how it works, adrenaline in the fray, and how you can tap into that and turn it into your favor. It was a lot of that sort of battlefield sort of thing, if you want to give it a name. But anyway, we had that workshop, and then we met afterwards, and then I decided to start training in combat Hapkido at that time. So it was very quick, it was very easy, very natural for me. I went, oh man, this is I love this stuff. So it became a natural thing, and I just took to it like duck to water, and the fluidity of it, the natural movement, everything about it. And then I just continued from there.
Let me ask you about the instinctive reaction capabilities that Hapkido trains. How does the mind work when you are in a real situation?
Yeah, the mind will rely on memory and rely on training. So the more you practice at something, and you can see this in soldiers, police officers, any profession, firemen, they'll train for a specific thing. And they train over and over and over and over until it becomes something as second nature. So essentially, once you get the brain going that way, the brain doesn't stop to think. So it's the same thing with, say, self-defense, combat Hapkido. When you're faced with someone's in your face, you immediately recognize, this guy probably wants to punch you in the mouth, But most people, what they do is they try to analyze that. Try to say, is that really happening? Is he really going to punch me in the mouth? And then, boom, then they get socked in the mouth, and they go, yeah, he did. So the mind doesn't quite understand. It's cerebral. It says, yes, logically he's going to punch you, but you don't want to believe it. And so therefore you're hit. But once you learn and practice, I'm reading a little bit of body language, I'm reading about body motion, he's dipping his shoulder, he's about to hit me. Then it becomes a little easier to deflect, move away, step in, that kind of stuff like we've been doing today. So you got to train the mind to recognize that this guy's wanting to hurt me, and he doesn't look like he's going to go away, and he doesn't look like he's going to listen to reason, so I need to do something about this. And really all you want to do is get out of there. So maybe as simply as he reaches out and you just push him away and run, hey, if that's all it takes, good. So as long as you've done something, and that's where you want to train your mind to do something. Think about it. Don't think about it in the sense of in the training side. If this part didn't work, maybe it's this part. Maybe stepping this way didn't work. Maybe I need to step this way. So you try it and practice it. Once you got it, you repeat, 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 repeat. And that way it sticks to you and it becomes natural. We're going to do a basic strike. We'll borrow the slap pads here. Okay, so we're going to do a simple strike for someone who's being, say, grabbed from behind. So let's just say someone kind of grabs you from behind, right? This way, this way, this way. It doesn't really matter much. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to separate yourself from it, right? So he's going to come in here. As soon as I separate myself by a step, that'd be a natural thing. Put the pad up. That's his head. And come right across, right around. All right? So it'll be like you're going to separate and then a strike. Backhand, live. You're hitting the side of his head. You will not hurt yourself. All right? It's not going to happen. You're going to knock him for a loop, though. Okay? And then you run. All right? That would be your next step. Just let your arm naturally swing. That's it. All right? The other one we're going to do with this pad here is you're just going to hold it against your forearm here, right? And your partner's going to give a vertical strike to the pad. So it's going to bounce you, but just go with it. Boom. Don't try to resist it, because if you do, you could end up starting to hurt the rotator cuff and that. Let the partner really smack it hard as they can, and put your hand up just in case he misses. And as soon as you feel the strike, just let the energy push you back. Don't resist. All right, that's the fun part about this. And it also allows the pad holder to feel the energy you're throwing into the pad, into the strike, and you'll get feedback. Say, yeah, that was pretty good, right? So it's just a strike. So when you're striking vertical, nice tight fist, roll those fingers in there. So strike. The first two knuckles here is what you're leading with. So on the left, you hit with this left. All right, so you're in here. All right, straight in. Okay. So your key center is right down in here. All right? So when you push against this part here, you push down, you'll feel a little lump push out. That's your muscle coming out. That's your key center. So when you force, this lump will push energy out. So if I want to push energy out through a punch, then I'm going to flex. It's like tennis players. They board the key up, the yell from martial arts. All the strikes they do. And that flexes everything. So what we try to say is that once you're opened up, you're going to be able to deliver more energy, more key energy to where you're hitting. We have live hand principle. And the live hand principle allows us to let the energy flow. If we make a fist, it kind of plugs the end. It's like turning off the garden hose, and the water won't come through. That's the energy. So we stay away from making fists all the time to block and to do anything. We'll make a fist to strike, but usually you have open hands so we can allow energy to flow. So we want to make sure everything is open to flow out, because as soon as this garden hose is pinched, then the water is pinched and the energy is pinched. So here we have a person who's just going to throw a punch at me, and I just want to move out of the way, because that's the natural thing to do, move out of the way. I don't want to be doing this, because what he's going to do is, if you see that I opened up here a little bit and I ended up off balance a little bit. I'm all my weight's on this leg. Why? Because I was trying to duck away from the punch. You don't do that. You step in. So he punches. Look at this. Oh, buddy. All right. So I'm right in on him, and I can then follow up with some sort of technique. It can be done from a jab. It can be done if he wants to turn around and throw a punch right from the shoulder in here. Doesn't matter, okay? Doesn't matter. The idea is to step in and just snuff out his strike. You just snuff it out. So if he throws a punch and you have your hands up, it doesn't matter. He's not going to hit you in the head. You're pushing in this direction with one step, and it's actually pushing him away. So we were applying a circle principle here as well. When he comes in, I'm pushing here. So his energy is going to go in that direction. And by stepping out to the side, I'm creating a water principle opportunity, which is here and probably striking him. with a follow-up. That's my water, okay?
The three principles of Hapkido are,
Yeah, harmony, water, and circle.
what is that? How does that translate? What would you say?
One doesn't necessarily come first over the others. Depends on what's happening. So you might, your harmony is to really kind of match up with the other person. Sort of like when you hear judo people say, yeah, you use their own momentum against them. Sort of like that idea. If you're able to match their movement and their speed and anticipate it and get out of the way, you're harmonizing with them. If they have already grabbed you, you can sense how strong they are, their center of gravity, how they're leaning, how they're pulling. You harmonize with that. So if they're pulling you, you go with them. So you don't resist. So you harmonize with what's happening. So that would naturally open up to water principle, flowing. Not resisting, not fighting it, flow. But also water principle in the flow also opens up a target, a weapon you can use, an elbow, a punch, whatever it might be, or a joint lock or something, a kick. It just opens things up just to disable them a little bit. And then you have your the circle. So the circle really is we're redirecting, so it can match up with the harmony. So we've got energy coming and we're stepping out of the way, we're creating a circle so that the energy goes away from you, and now you suddenly have an opening to strike, and that's water principle will kick in. So in the middle of a technique, they can shift around, blend. Both at the same time. Then you get more strength.
Yeah, I'm going this way. Okay.
That's it. Push a little bit farther. Yes. He's that far from your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. You're not supposed to be hurting. He's the one supposed to be hurting. That's it. Good. So as you can see that the drills, we try to go hard, minding that we don't want to hit our partner. But we, as you saw James on Nicole there, we went fairly hard. So there was no follow through, but it was a heavy punch, so that when she went to block it, she could feel, yeah, she really had to push it away, and it makes it more realistic that way. And you can see that she, had no problems with it. A little bit of adjustment, and everything's good to go. Yeah. How you doing? Okay? Yeah.
I just feel
Show me.
more.
Step in.
Step in?
Yeah, if you take a punch, if you just do this, then it's going to follow through. So I need to step in. Boom, here. Okay?
I started out originally in Taekwondo. I achieved a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo. Then I moved into Jiu-Jitsu, where I achieved a first-degree black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. And then I moved into Hapkido, and I'm 2 levels away from getting a black belt in Hapkido. So I like to keep active.
You've been doing martial arts, I assume, since your teenage years.
Oh, not since my teenage years. No, I'd say since I was about 30.
So you started at age 30. You weren't looking back at when you started, and you weren't intimidated, were you?
I wasn't intimidated. I always wanted to do it when I was younger. I started dabbled a little bit in Shotokan karate when I was 16. I just didn't have the finances back when I was 16. Then opportunities just didn't allow me to get into martial arts until my mid years. So when I finally did start, then it just took off, and I kept on going.
You must be in excellent health. You practice regularly. Would you encourage people that are, getting into their 40s and so forth, get off the couch, get active? The martial arts is for you.
Absolutely. It just, it gets you going. Like you said, it gets you off the couch. It gets you moving. It allows you to do a lot of stretching. It allows you to be disciplined, and it gets your heart rate going, and it helps with all your metabolism. So yeah, it's helped me keep in shape too.
From a self-defense point of view, as we all get older, people start to fear a little more, vulnerability starts to creep in. The martial arts keeps a lot of that away. How do you feel about your own self-defense today? You feel confident when you're on the street and defending your family and so forth?
Absolutely. The confidence has built up with me over the past 20 years in the martial arts, that each new level of martial arts that I take, the confidence level just continues to build to the point where I know that if I were able to get into an incident out on the street, that I could easily defend myself or my family to be able to get away and take care of myself.
Martial arts brings you around many different people. Would you say that it enhances your quality of life because you're meeting people from so many varieties of backgrounds, all with the same purpose of training for self-defense?
Well, absolutely, because I mean, it's not just a thing you do. It's when you're in it for so long, you tend to adapt it as a way of life, and then so you have a whole different outlook when you meet people. There's kind of an instant respect that you have when you look at people. It's not just I'm better than them. It's just we're on an even plane.
Knife and gun defense, one of the principal things of Hapkido. This is practical martial arts. Is that something you're specializing in? You feel is really giving you an edge out there?
Absolutely. It's natural to be afraid of a weapon when you're approached by it. The martial arts has given me the ability to be able to not be afraid, to take control of the situation and thwart the attack and defend myself and take away from whoever's trying to attack me. And that's what I attribute to the martial arts.
My mission all along. That was my dream, my goal, my vision. I wanted to have a great self-defense system, but I was not ready, and I didn't want to betray or disrespect the original art. The original art was good, had great foundation. It's just that, if someone cannot kick to the head, maybe kicking to the kneecap is good enough in self-defense, and that was the kind of modifications that I made to the system. And so I made it also more accessible to people in their 40s and 50s and 60s. Actually, we have people in their 70s and 80s that train in our system. And that was not possible if we had kept the original art intact, which requires high kicking, requires a lot of break falls, requires certain acrobatic movements that the majority of the population cannot do, and quite frankly should not do. So, if you're pursuing the study of an art for the sake of the art and for tradition and beauty, that's fine. You can pursue that. Other people pursue sport, and they gravitate toward arts that are geared for sport and competition, and that's fine too. People pursue the study of martial art for many different reasons. My focus, my vision was always for self-defense.
So the idea is to not let things get out of hand. You're in here, your hands are up, come on. So even if he punched me, I got protection. And what would I do if he punched me? I duck. Okay, so that would be a natural thing to do. He might then decide to punch me, which is, I have to go in that direction. So in this particular one, he grabs me, I'm in here, I hit him, I pushed him back, he throws a punch in here, catch him with an elbow, away he goes. But I have to move quickly. I can't measure what's happening. I can't take a guess. It cannot be a perfect block. Don't stand so, don't lean back so much. Power in, okay? Better. So in this particular two-person attack, two-man, two-woman, whatever, they're going to be a little close in. What they generally try to do is to kind of box you in a little bit. And you're kind of backing up and you go, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So you immediately would put your hands up. That would be a natural thing to do, to keep a distance between you and that person in the front. But it doesn't stop them from reaching in and grabbing me by the collar, the jacket. the shirt, whatever it might be. So you're in here, and then you're going to power in. You're going to strike, and then come in and strike. And so the big thing for a person to get used to is to attack. That's the warrior mentality that we want to bring out. Because after all, martial arts was first developed several thousand years ago for warriors. This is not a sport. We have no competitions. So if anyone wants to learn how to defend themselves, this place you come. Because you're going to talk about what my brain is feeling, the emotions I'm feeling. It's natural to be afraid, but you're going to execute a technique. Why? To get out there and get the safety. You're not going to hang around.
Joining me now is Mr. Richard Russell, a first dan in Hapkido. Now, Richard, tell us your remarkable story. It's very inspirational. When did you start Hapkido, and what age were you at that time?
I started in 2012. I was 62. Decided to do something I've always wanted to do. And it took me 6 years to get to this point, but I was on some medication, a few injuries here and there, nothing serious, but I look at it more of a journey than a destination. But I finally did make it to my destination.
Many people feel that they're senior citizens, they become vulnerable, they have a sense of fear. Has Hapkido training given you a new outlook on life and given you a sense of confidence again?
Oh, definitely. Very much so. And it reflects on all aspects of your life. There's nothing like confidence and, to put a little strut in your stride and hold your head up and not have to worry about cowering in fear just walking down the street. Like you go out on the weekends, you can walk, hopefully you can walk down the street without being accosted, but if you are, you're ready for it.
Definitely, you are not somebody who's going to be called a senior citizen that you should be messing with. Is that right?
I would hope to think that, yes.
Excellent.
Yes,
Excellent.
definitely.
Excellent.
I always start off in my seminars with situational awareness. I always tell them, it's okay for you to say no. You don't have to agree with everything that people say to you. And you need to start listening to your gut because it's going to tell you what is wrong, and you need to listen to that. So for a woman, before we can even get into any kind of techniques, we have to get the mind right. We have to get that mindset that it's okay to fight back. So my seminars always start with that, and I always ask questions to the women in my seminar. And, sometimes a woman will tell me, no, I don't think that I could ever fight back. And it's my job to help her change her mind and see that absolutely she can fight back, and she has the right to fight back. So I think that is the most important thing. If you are going to teach women, you have to get them in the right mindset first.
You must understand what she's telling you, however. Her audience is not a bunch of martial arts women in the class. Those women that put on a martial arts uniform and are already training in one of our schools or somebody else's schools, any style, those are not the women that Trina teaches to. These are not the audience that she received. Now, some of them show up at a seminar to learn her techniques and her presentation and her style, and that's great. But most of the women showing up at the seminar have never, ever taken a martial art class in their lives.
Yeah.
So we cannot teach them complicated things, number one. Number two, we're going to have them for only a few hours and maybe never see them again. Yes. And number three, she has to work mostly on the motivation and empowerment, situational awareness, like she said. And the last thing to remember, some of these women have been brutalized, have been victimized. They have been abused physically, some of them psychologically. Sometimes they've been abused by the system that has not protected them. She is there to teach these women how to develop the spirit and some techniques how to fight back. So they're not martial arts women.
Nice throw. In our training, we don't use rubber knives. We use aluminum knives. They're dull, of course, but they add a sense of reality to the feel. If you get hit and you know on the arm or something, you feel okay. I can feel that. It's just not something that collapses. You're not sure if you got cut or stabbed. For us, what we're going to do is simply, here, hands up. He brings it forward. I got it. I have it. From here, what do I do? Well, I could get fancy and I could do an outside joint lock away he goes. I could do that. Break his arm because he still has a knife in his hand. So it is really that simple. Okay? He comes in, he approaches, you go step, back, I grab it. I got to have my helper come along, cup it. I'm going to take a step forward, and I'm going to put my elbow over his arm, and I'm going to project the break. I want to snap his elbow, hyperextend it, break it, whatever happens from that. Doesn't really matter, because the knife will drop. When you let go, he's dropping the knife. So we have many ways of being thrown against the wall with a knife to your neck. Tons of ways. But essentially, the escape from it is, the first steps of it are pretty much the same for a lot of them. Drop your center of gravity. Look how far the knife came away from my neck. I'm safe now. He's kind of at an odd angle. He's thinking, this is not good. All right? So you have a couple of options. You can hit him, if you like. You can hit him, if you like. All right? You can take him down. And drop your center of gravity, Les. Right? So you're really just tugging him. You're pulling him down this way, and his arm will follow. He's got no choice. He's pinned here. You're dropping. He's dropping. There's no choice. Right? Dude, oh, he went down already. That was quick. Just boom, away he went. We train folks to trap the slide. Boom, I trap the slide. If there is a round up the spout and the round goes off, the worst I'll get is a massive ringing in my ear. Bullet went that way. It will not reload. So one of the things you do is like you're clapping. All right? You're going to come in and grab it, just like that, right away. So now you notice that I have his hand trapped around the handle. I have my hand around the slide. He can pull this if he wants. But what I'm going to do now is his finger is on the trigger. I'm going to dislocate it by pushing in and pulling it away. And now I have the gun, and I cock it, and I... So here's another one that's kind of, we saw the videos on YouTube, but you got the guy who wants to just... Come on. He's got you in this position here. He's not like this necessarily, but he's in this position here. Oh, you want to volunteer?
Careful where you wish for.
Yeah. So,
Give me your money,
so he's in here, and he's poking at you. The one thing I want to do is I want to get out of the way of the gun. I just want to step away from the gun. If he pulls the trigger now, I'm okay. It just flies off over there somewhere. Okay? So as he does that, this hand is going to come down at the same time. My hand wraps around here like this. You recognize this? Okay? And my hand is up in here, up around the wrist, here. Thumb, thumb. We just shot the cameraman. Okay? So I'm going to step across now, and I'm going to take him into an outside wrist lock takedown. So I'm going to come up underneath, here, and I'm going to destroy his shoulder. But for this purpose, we're just going to take him down. All right? We don't do it because it doesn't damage that. What we just do, the principles, the concepts. I want to do a circle. I want to finish in a circle. Right? So I can take you this way. Or I could just go in a circle this way. I got his second GUP certificate. He's got one step left to go before his black belt. Congratulations on this accomplishment. It's well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
You have to have spirit, you have to have strength, and your story speaks to that. You had tragedy strike your life. Could you tell us about that?
On July 9th, 2017, my family and I had finished a week in Galapagos, and we were on our way to Machu Picchu. And so we had to overnight in Lima. So we stayed in Lima, historic Lima, and spent a couple hours doing some touristy things. One of the things that we were told to do at the hotel was to take a double-decker tour bus through the city, which went up to a mountain called San Cristobal. The driver, I saw a car come around the corner. He swerved to miss the car, pulled it in tight to come back in, but his speed was too fast. And the tires were the same height as the retaining wall or the side wall on the side of the mountain, and the bus tipped over and we went over a cliff and dropped down about 15, 20 feet. And my daughter and I were thrown from the bus. My wife was seat belted in, so she went for 2.5 rotations. And when I was thrown, when I landed on the ground, milliseconds later, the bus rolled over the bottom half of my body, killing the woman in front of me. And I saw just dust, and it was surreal. We were moved into separate trauma centers. My daughter and I knew we were each alive, but we didn't know about my wife, and my wife didn't know about us. It was 12 hours later that we were reunited. My daughter wasn't, because they had moved her to another site, and I had her passport in my backpack, or my fanny pack. Anyway, it was 24 hours before we got her back. And we spent a week in Lima ICU, and were transported by air back to Canada. And we spent 3 weeks in the QE2. And then we're ambulanced out to my mother-in-law's cottage because it was a one-floor location. We weren't able to do stairs. I had both my knees damaged and a fractured hip. It drove my femur up into my acetabulum and shattered my hip. But it didn't displace it, so I didn't have surgery. But I have had surgeries on my knees. The last one was on May 8th this year, and the first one was February earlier that year. So coincidentally, I was supposed to test for this belt level just before we went to Lima. And a year and a half later, I've just received, I did graduate here a couple months ago. But I'll say that for me, Hapkido is a passion of mine. I've dabbled in a couple other martial arts, and this martial art with Master Mike, where we learn practical self-defense practices, techniques, that you don't have to condition yourself for 3 years and then you suddenly get up to a belt level. This is functional, and the science of the human body is very astounding, and I'm passionate about it, and so for me, it was really tough. It was really tough coming in leg braces and crutches, and a lot of the members came to see me in the hospital, came to see my family. But when I came back here, I had to sit and watch, and I had to listen to the doctor, and I had to accept that I couldn't do anything for it was like almost a year and a bit. And so when I first started coming back wearing leg braces, I had to be mindful of just being here. You have to be practical. take into consideration your wounds. Surround yourself with your brothers and sisters, or like for us, we have the brotherhood and the sisterhood of this academy, and I have a wonderful master in Mike Fournier, and those things aid in the healing process. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us tonight on Evolution as we took an inside look at the world of combat Hapkido. Join us next time here on Evolution as we journey to Truro, Nova Scotia, and we caught up with an incredible team of martial artists as they practice the mystical art of Kung Fu. Thank you for watching. I'm your host, Dwayne Robicheau. This is Evolution, Nova Scotia's martial arts.
It's so subtle all of a sudden.